Hello, my favorite koala knits and knacks friends. This is Shelley, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this very cute baby beanie with multicolored yarn. I have made this to match the 4 square blanket that is also on my channel, so look that up as well. And yeah, what you're going to need is 3 colors of yarn. This is 3-weight yarn, but you can use yarn of your choice, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to show you at the end of the video how to make the pom-pom on a clover pom-pom maker. All right, so get your supplies and your Sentro 40 or your Addi 40 6 needle, whichever one you like. Before I got my Sentro, I made a lot of hats on my Addi 46, so either one works great. So get your supplies and we'll see you soon. All right, so if you have your supplies, let's get started. Now I'm using my Sentro 40 needle machine, but you can do this exact same pattern on your Addi 48 if that's what you have and it's the same. I've made many baby beanies, infant hats, beanies with my 48 until I got my 40. So I'm going to use my Sentro 40, but you go ahead and use whatever one you have. I've got to take this little row counter off. It's a Susan Bates row counter that I use because sadly the 40 doesn't come with a row counter. Okay, I'm gonna do the long tail cast on. You're gonna put your yarn behind the first black, in front of the next one, in front and behind, all the way around. Now I know I can purchase the row counter that I can attach to my machine, and I might eventually do that, but for now I like this Susan Bates counter. I just put it on my fingers, and the downfall with that for me is that I like to hold my yarn for tension. I don't usually use a tensioner. I just hold it between my fingers like this, and then I control the tension myself. And I can feel what's coming up if there's a knot or so, you know, what have you. But because I have to use this hand, my left hand for counting, I'm going to put it through the smallest hole in my in the yarn guide there. I find that with the 3-weight yarn, it needs to be a little bit tighter, or it doesn't get underneath these little nooks and crannies there to for the needle to catch it, and then I have tucked stitches. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put our first color in. For me, that's a blue, and I'm using the Loops and Threads Baby Delight yarn. And I'm going to do 35 rows. This will be the inside of my hat. Now, for my first row, I'm going to click it on one there. For my first row, I just go really slowly, and I actually push these needles just a little bit. I find I have to do that with this 3-weight yarn on my Sentro, just so that it grabs the first row. There's no weight that's hanging there to help the project along. So I just do this. Sometimes I need to, and sometimes I don't. I'm going to pull that little yarn end down, and I'm going to, when I go past my black needle, I count my row. I like to know what row I'm actually working on, not what row I'm finished. So now I'm going to go really slowly again for the first. I do it for the first 3 rows because I want to make sure that it's catching. Okay, and you want to make sure that you've got a good loose feed coming out of your yarn ball. That's the one thing with this particular Baby's Delight yarn. I find that it has so many knots in the center. Maybe that's why they discontinued it. So I'm sorry that I'm using a yarn that's discontinued, but again, you can use whatever yarn you're most comfortable with, whether that's a 3-weight yarn or a 4-weight yarn, or whatever you're comfortable with. You just follow the same pattern using whatever yarn is your choice. But this fine 3-weight yarn, really, I love the looks of it, and I have a blanket that this hat goes with on. It's called the 4-square blanket that's on my channel, so look that up. But I find that this yarn is more prone to knotting, and I guess that's because it's really fine. But that's okay. I love it anyway, so I persevere with it. So I crossed over this black marker, so I'm going to count my next row. So I'm on row 4. But I love this Sentro. I'm on row 5, and I don't mind using this counter either. 6, 7. So that's how I do it. I just click it when I go past that black notch, mark divider, then I click my counter because I know that's the row I'm working on. So now I'm on 9, and I'm going to go ahead and do 35 rows of this color. So once you get done your 35 rows of your first color, see me back and we'll do a color change. Okay, I'm going to click on 35. And then I'm going to stop when I see that black divider. in front of my yarn guide. Okay, have to remove my counter off my fingers so I can use my hand. And I'm going to take it out of my yarn feeder or tensioner, and then I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to take it out of the feeder there and put it in the center of my work there, and I'm going to take my second color, which for me is the green, and I'm going to insert it into that yarn feeder. Okay, making sure it goes through both of these. You want to make sure it's tightly under that bottom one as well. Okay, and then I'm going to put it into the very tightest circle of my tensioner, and then I'm going to just do 4 needles. And then I take both ends of my working yarn. You see this one right here? I want to make sure it goes down and under. And I pull, and I have to help it under sometimes. Just like that. And the reason why I do that is because I want the first few stitches of my row to be even tension, just like the rest of the row, and not loose. Okay, now I'm going to give that a good tight tie. I'm going to cut this off so it's a little bit shorter. I'll put my Susan Bates row counter back on, and I have to change it to 36 because I already started my 36th row. Okay, and then I'm going to do 15 rows of this, so until I get to row 50. 35 and 15 is 50, and so when I get to row 50, I'll see you back and we'll do another color change. Okay, so I am at row 50. I finished row 50. I'm going to cut off my tail there. I'm going to take it out of my tensioner and my yarn feeder, and I'm going to put it in the center of my machine. And then I'm going to choose my white, my third color. So whatever your third color is, you choose that. And we're going to insert it into our feeder there, and then into our yarn guide, into the smallest section. I'm going to do 3 or 4 needles, then take the yarn end of both ends of my working yarn and pull it tight there, and then I'm going to tie my little tight knot. You can wait till you're around a couple of rows to tie your knots if you prefer. Often I do that with 4-weight yarn, but with the 3-weight yarn I like to just do it in the beginning, because I find I don't want to pull it too tight, because 3-weight yarn is a little bit different for the feel to work with. Okay, so I'm going to put my counter back on, and I passed my black needle already, so I'm going to hit that. So I'm working on row 51, and I'm going to do 5 rows. 52, 53, 54, 55. And I'm going to watch for that black marked divider to come around, and I'm going to stop right in front of my yarn feeder there. And there we go. I'm going to cut that yarn, put it in the center of my project between the last white and the first black. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do 5 blue. So you're going to do a color change again. You're going to do 5 rows of blue. Then you're going to do 5 rows of green, 5 rows of white, 5 rows of blue, and 5 rows of green. And that will take you to 80 rows for your project. When you get to about, well, maybe do another 10 or 15 rows, and then start rolling it up into a donut, okay? Just like that, just so it keeps your tension even around the barrel. Now, with such a light material, if you're using a 3-weight, it's not gonna make a whole lot of difference on only 80 rows, but I still like to do it for a practice and for habit. So go ahead and do that, and when you are finished that, you're going to see me back and we'll close off our beanie, okay? So again, you're gonna do a color change here, and you're gonna do 5 rows of blue, which is your first color, 5 rows of green, which is your second color, 5 rows of white, which is your third color, and then you're going to go back to 5 rows of blue, which is your first color, and 5 rows of green, which is your second color. So whatever colors you have, of course, you adapt it to that. And when you get that done, I'll see you back. All right, so once we have our last row done, we're going to cut our yarn, but we're going to leave a pretty long tail. I usually leave about 9 to 12 inches, okay? And then we're going to do a long tail cast off. So thread your needle. We're going to turn our handle so that this one stitch is able to be picked up there, the needle is releasing it. Then we're gonna go to this next one. And I do 3 or 4 or even 5 before I circle this and have more exposed. just like that, because that one would have fallen off. Because if you pull too much on this, then the one where the needle is already down and it's exposed, it can fall off those two teeth, and that's where you get dropped stitches. So if you find that, you know, it's loose like this and you're scared that it's going to come off, put your finger on that next one, and then the next one, and then the next one before you take the stitch off, and that will help you prevent you from having dropped stitches. Okay, and then we'll just keep going around. I usually don't have to put my finger there because I know the feel of it, so I very rarely will get a drop stitch. But if you're not if you're new at this and you haven't done this a lot, this is the thing you need to do to prevent you from getting a drop stitch. Now, if you get a drop stitch, don't start your project all over. You can easily fix it. And I have a video that will show you how to do that. So you can look down on my channel and see how to do that if you need to, how to fix a dropped stitch once your project is off your machine. Okay, so we're going to pull that through. Coming around. Now, the needle that came with the machine, I find, I don't like how it works to take the stitches off. I find it sticks a little bit, so I prefer to use these metal needles that you'll see me using in all of my videos. So you just find the needle that works best for you. You don't have to use the one that comes with the project. You're not going to wreck your machine if you choose one that is nicer in your hands than that one. So we've got it off now. We've got the last stitch off. Pull that a little bit tight. You can take your needle off, and there you've got your little rolled donut, which is so cute. I'm going to remove my machine, and then I'll see you back and we'll finish it off, okay? Okay, so I have my machine moved and we're ready to go. So you're going to unroll your donut and see those beautiful colors coming to life, and then you're going to just lightly stretch it widthwise all the way down and then lengthwise. Make that a habit because it kind of puts your stitches and your rows in the right position and you know, makes them all nice and even. Okay, so you're going to just choose any side, doesn't matter which side you start on, and you're going to take your yarn end, roll that up a little bit, and you're going to just lightly pull that with 3-weight yarn. It's just like such an easy thing to do. Hardly any pressure. I'm going to cut this off because my yarn end's way too long now. So I like it long when I'm taking it off, doing a long tail cast off on my machine, but I don't like it so long when I'm sewing it, so then I cut it. Okay, so we're going to pull on that. And then we're going to take our smaller needle, and we're going to just go around the top edge of stitches. Top row there, just to secure it. For a baby hat, I generally go around once. If I'm doing an adult hat, I'll go around 2, maybe 3 times. Okay, just because we want to have it secure. But a baby is not going to, this hat is not going to undo, and the yarn is not going to break on a little tiny baby's head. So there we go. We're going to pull that. Then I'm going to make a little knot. So I'm going to do that twice. Just like so. And then I'm going to put my hand up on the other end, up through the other end, so that when I poke my needle through that center, I can grab it with my hand so it's not going to snag the inside. I'm going to grab that, I'm going to pull the yarn through at the same time, and I'm going to grab a hold with, just pinch the top of this hat with my 2 fingers, and I'm going to bring the whole thing through so that my hat is folded in half, okay? Bring this yarn end out, and then just pull on this a little bit, and it'll bring the knot to the inside of the hat there instead of on the outside. Then you're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to turn it around here. You're going to do the exact same thing with this other side. Okay? Rolling up the rim a little bit so that it's easier to find your stitches when you're sewing. Again, I'm going to cut this off. It's too long. Take my needle. And I'm going to go around, picking up the stitches. Oops, got my tail too long there, my fold over. Okay, and I'm going to just continue here, just smooth it out there so you can see those. See how you can see those stitches so nicely when you smooth it out? It'll give you a nicer finish at the top than if you were to just have it scrunched up like this and go around, because then you're grabbing maybe stitches from the second row as well. So you want to make sure that you're only grabbing that top row. So I smooth it out, then I go around. Oops, lost it off my needle. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you have fine yarn and a bigger hole in the end of your needle. Okay, so let's do that again. Pull that through. I'm going to go one more little section here. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to do a little knot. Get that out of the way. I just do a little knot over two strands of yarn there. Do it one more time. There you go. Now you take your needle off, and then you want to make sure that the inside of the hat comes right up to the point of the outside of the hat. So you do that by taking these two yarn ends and tying a knot. Now, when you pull, it is not that hard actually to break this yarn strand. And if you do that, then sometimes you have to, well, then it's a whole different ballgame. There's a new video for this. You'd need another video for that. You'd need to go around and pick up some stitches. You wouldn't have to take the whole thing apart, but you'd have to pick up some stitches and fix it that way. But you're going to tie 2 tight knots in there, maybe even 3. Let's do 3. And then you're going to just put your hand inside and feel it. Make sure it's really tight up against, they're both really tight together. And if they weren't, I would feed this one end down and then the other end down, and I would tie it again and snug it up even closer together, okay? So you want to make sure that both the inside and the outside are close together. Then you're going to snip that off. And you're going to put your hand inside there, and you're going to hide those yarn ends into the center in between your 2 layers, and then you're going to cut it off. Okay, so as you can see, this is the inside of the hat, but you know what? If there's no pom-pom on it, they can wear this as a campfire beanie and not have a brim. So I've made this particular hat for a 3 to 6 month old, but if you don't use the brim, it can go right up to a 12-month-old. But when you put the brim on it, then it makes it 3 to 6 months old. But this is one side. It's the inside, but it's still beautiful. But this is how I've meant it to be. So when you do a solid color on the other side, it really gives you options to have a reversible hat. And you can reverse it when you have either a detachable pom-pom on there or no pom-pom. We're going to put a pom-pom that's made with yarn in all of these colors, and it'll be tied tightly onto it. So this particular one won't be a reversible hat unless they untie well, it won't be, because I really knot the pom-pom really well. But that's the options that you have. I just love these colors together. I think this is so incredibly adorable. So I'm going to go ahead and make the pom-pom, and then we'll put it on top. You can look for my video on how to do that. I'll have a video on how I make my pom-pom on my Clover pom-pom maker, or you can make them just with your fingers. Sometimes what I do, before I got my pom-pom makers, what I did is I took yarn and I wrapped it around 3 fingers, and I went around about 80 times. Then I took a strand of yarn. If you don't have a Clover, this is how you can do it. Then I took a strand of yarn, put it on my needle, and I went up through my finger, pulled that yarn up, and then went down through this side, and then I pulled it really tight, and then I could make my pom-pom that way. And then I cut the ends, of course, and fluffed them up and made it round. But now I have my Clover pom-pom makers, and I love them. I think they just are so worth the money. So go ahead and finish off your hat like this, and then see me back and we'll add a pom-pom. Okay, so this is like, when I measure it, it's like from this white part to this white side, because that's the size of your pom-pom, it comes to about 2 1/4 inches. So it's a 2 1/4 inch circle. So that's the size that I will tell you that this pom-pom will be, is a 2 1/4 inch diameter. And that's what we're going to use today. Now, these Clover pom-pom makers come in a lot of different sizes, and you can choose whatever size you want. They come I have 4 different sizes, and this is the 3rd size, I believe. And that's the size I'm going to choose for this baby hat. Sometimes I use the smaller one, but I like, when I'm making colorful pom-poms, I like the size of the big ones. I think they just look so rainbow-ish and so cute. So what you're going to do is you're going to open the one side. You've got two little holders here. You're going to open them, put them together so that they are side by side. You're going to take your yarn, whatever color you choose. I'm using 3 colors in this particular hat because it's for a beanie that I've made, and you can find that beanie, striped beanie, on my channel. But I'm going to use 3 colors, green, white, and blue. And this is a 3-weight yarn, but you can use a 4-weight yarn. You could use whatever weight you want, and you do the same technique. You're going to wrap it around. And keep wrapping. Now, you don't have to count. I just wrap until it looks, just until I feel I want to change it. Now I got to get some slack out of my yarn ball. I want to make sure that the whole thing is covered though, at least, and then I go around a couple times. You'll see. I'm not counting because that, you know, you don't need to be that perfect. You want your pom-pom to you don't want perfect amounts of colors, like the same amount of white, the same amount of blue, the same amount of green. You want it to be varied. So I think it looks nicer when you don't count and you just keep going around like this. So I have the bar covered right around here, and the goal of this is that we're going to keep adding yarn until we get almost a flat spot right here. Okay, that's the goal of doing this. So that's when you know that you want to make sure you push that over if that happens. So you want to make sure that that you go far enough up to make a nice full pom-pom. So I'm just going to add my second color. Now some people lay it across the back here and hold it and go nice, and but I don't think it really matters because it's hidden anyways, and if it's not hidden it's going to get cut off when you trim. So then you just take your next color and you just keep wrapping. Now, if you have 3 colors and you want one color to be more prominent, then you wrap that one a little bit thicker than you wrap the other 2. Now you can wrap halfway blue and then halfway green, and then, or you can, however you want to do it. These pom-poms on these pom-pom makers are just they're so beautiful because every pom-pom is unique, depending on how you roll it. You're not going to get, unless you use one solid color. They're all going to look unique and different and beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to keep going here because I want to have predominantly more. I want the blue to really shine through on this one. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to stop there. Cut that off. I'm going to grab my green. I'm going to do likewise, just the same thing. Okay, and again, I honestly don't care where this end goes because I cut it, like I said, I trim it off when I take it off, the pom-pom off, and I'm trimming it, and you'll see that in the end. So don't be too concerned about that. Don't think it's got to be on the bottom or it's got to be on the top, or you got to have it a certain place. It can be on the side, whatever. You just need the end to, you just need to hold it so that you can start wrapping and then just let it go and it's fine. Okay, so I'm going to keep wrapping my green. See, and when it goes over that little edge there, you want to make sure that you catch it. Okay, and I'm going to keep going back and forth with that green. And the other side, I might not follow the same color variation. You can, you don't have to. I usually don't, to be honest. I use the same colors, but I don't necessarily start with the same one and end with the same one. I just pick it up and just do it as I grab, and I just find that makes the nicest pom-poms. Okay, so I've got quite a bit of green in there. I'm going to add one more little squirt of white because I did a really thin layer of white before. I didn't do too much white, so I'm going to add just a little thin layer of white at the top here. And it doesn't have to all connect. Like, you can have green in between showing. You don't have to have it so perfect that every little, like, you don't want to have to work on it so that it's like this, so that every strand meets the next one. Don't do that. Just go crazy and roll this thing. Okay. Okay, so you will see that little dip that was in here is starting to fill in, and that's about where you want it. You don't want it to go completely flat. I'll put my scissor there. I can go a little bit more actually. There's still a little bit of space in there. You don't want it to go completely flat, but you want to have a little bit of space. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit more. And I think that's perfect. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to close this just like that. You see how that is like that? Perfect, beautiful. You're going to do that exact same thing to the other side. And when you get the other side done, come back and see me and we'll do the next step. All right, so we got our second side wrapped. Okay, and you can see that when I put that there, there's still a space. Not a very big space, but there's a space. You could probably go even a little bit more, but I'm going to just leave it at that. And you close that side. Okay, and then I just cut off these ends right away. You can do it later, but when you take it off the pom-pom maker, but that's what it looks like right now. So now you're going to take, you see where this opening is here, where there's the two sides that are open? Go to the other side where it's closed. I find that if I do that and then I hold this side with my finger, then it doesn't lift up. Then you're going to take your scissors, you're going to go underneath that, and you're going to cut. Now I am going to get, you can get those really small sewing scissors that can get underneath this a little bit better. I don't have a pair of, these scissors are actually sharp. They're Wiltshire scissors, but I even have a hard time getting through this with these scissors. So if you can get your peak of your scissors up through that and then cut, it helps. But you got to realize this is a thick amount of yarn. So that's why it takes a little bit of effort here, but well worth it in the end, okay? So you make sure that that's cut all along like that, okay? Isn't that pretty? And then you go to the other side and you do the same thing. So I always hold my fingers down on that one, and then I go to the back of it and I start cutting. Okay. So whatever scissors you have that work best for you. Just know it's going to take a little bit of tension to get that through all of that, okay? So there we go. We've got our pom-pom cut on both sides. Now do not open these things yet. You need to grab yourself a piece of yarn. I would say grab at least 1.5 feet. Better to have more than not enough. Then you're going to just stick it in the middle there. Pop it down through those two dividers. Turn it around and come up. Then you're gonna tie a knot, okay? So tie it nice and snug. If you got to make sure it goes in between and all the way down. And again, don't pull so hard that it breaks, but you really have to have, you still have to have a lot of tension. So I will usually pull and then loosen my grip a little bit and then pull, loosen my grip and just pull again. And then I'll do a knot. Another knot, okay? I'm going to pull that pretty tight. And then what I do is I take it and go around to the other side and I tie one more knot. Get it nice and firm in there. Tie your knot. Now you need your ends to be long enough to sew it onto your project, but not as long as what I have them here. So I'm going to cut that off, and now comes the satisfying part. Well, but before we do that, if you've got any that are really long and sticking up, you can start the trimming process and get those off there now, and make it nice and even. If there's any long ends, it's probably the ends that you started with. But then again, there's some that maybe would have been a little looser, or you crossed it over a long distance and it made it a little bit longer. You can trim those, and I trim it all up after I'm done anyway. So now that you've got that done, you're going to take one side and you're going to open these two. Hold the ends there and then just pull that open. Look at that. So beautiful. Now you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Pull them open. I just love it. And then you're going to take your centers and pull them apart. And I always put it back together just because then I think there is only one way to put it back together, but I always want to make sure it's in the same way I started, so I always put it together right then and there, okay? Then you can give your pom-pom a little shake. Look how beautiful that is. Like, look at it. But he needs a little trim job. okay? So you're gonna just go around, make him round. He's already round, but you know, some of them you might have done a little bit looser or whatever. You just want to cut off those little ones that wanted to peek out, okay? And get it nice and smooth. I just give it a little light haircut all the way around. Not cutting off too much, of course, but I want to make sure that, you see these little things that are sticking out? We just want to make sure that those are cut off. So that's why just skim the top with your scissors and cut those off, and you'll have a nicer pom-pom, okay? Down here, that one's a little long, cut that off, okay? Shake that off. And we got this beautiful, beautiful pom. Don't you just love it? Okay, so now we're gonna take our hat. We're going to, excuse my messy station here. You're gonna just take one of those ends, put it on your needle, go through the top and into the center of the inside, pull that through. Do the same thing with the other one, but just I would grab a little bit of the side there just so that it doesn't just pull out. You want to make sure that there's a yarn in between there. So just go in between one of those yarns and then down inside. And then when you get your second one inside, you tie it off in a nice tight knot. Then you snip these off a little bit shorter and you hide them in between your two layers. And you have a beautiful, beautiful beanie with a pom-pom, okay? I love the size of that pom-pom on a little baby beanie. I think it's just the most adorable size, okay? So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, if you don't have a clover pom-pom maker, you just make it however you make your pom-poms. I used to use my fingers, like I had said before, and do it that way, and that works beautifully too. But if you haven't got a clover pom-pom maker, it's worth the money to get them. I think that they just do such a beautiful, beautiful job. Okay, so thanks for watching this tutorial. Have a great day. Bye-bye.